Good evening and welcome to tonight's edition of The Probe. We are but a nation at an economic crossroads, a place where rhetoric, slogans, vain partisan chants and speeches achieve very little. We are a people in dire need of leadership that's blessed with the abundance of discernment, tact and strategy, and perhaps the base blunt common sense to guide us through these days of harsh economic turmoil. I don't know what you think of what Mr. President is about to say. Will it be a well-rehearsed, detailed speech and a decent attempt to provide some leadership for a nation in dire need of one? After the speech, we'll gather around this table with some of the smartest minds for such times to digest and analyze the thoughts shared by the President and whether it has the power to maneuver this economic turbulence that we are faced with. You're welcome to tonight's edition of The Probe. We are live on the JoyNews channel. We are on Joy Prime, Joy 99.7 FM and affiliates across the country. We are on myjoyonline.com. I am Emefa Apawu. I'll take you shortly to the Jubilee House for the much-awaited presidential address on Ghana's economy. What will happen? What are the measures that are going to be announced by the president? Once the president is ready, I'll take you live there. Don't forget, your reactions are welcome after that speech, plus those of experts and civil society as well. I'll be bringing in Dr. Prista Chumisi Bafo, is an economist, a senior lecturer at University of Ghana Business School, joining us via Zoom. Mr. Martin Pebu is a lawyer and rights activist. He joins me in the studios as well. We also have Solomon Paddy with Guta. I'll have GPRTU join us. We know that the president has been engaging and consulting widely. Professor Bokping will also join us at some point. We'll be hearing all your views on what the announcement will be. I know that the president has been meeting the AGI, they've been meeting Guta, they've been meeting TUC, he's been meeting the Bankers Association. Widely, he's been meeting market women as well. Quite a busy week and a cabinet retreat as well. After that, we'll be hearing from him shortly, address the nation on the economy. What will it be? Your guess is as good as mine. We'll get to hear him on all that we need to know. What will the rest of the year look like as we try to get that staff level agreement with the IMF? What will happen? And the budget 2023, which is supposed to be read in November, will it actually be read in November amidst the calls for Ken Oforiatta to be sacked? Well, that is not going to happen according to the majority, 95 of them called for his sacking. But after that meeting, a lot has changed. Well, it's a good time now to take you to the Jubilee House for that presidential address. Please stay with us.
Fellow Ghanaians, good evening. Back in 2020, at the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic, I started a regular conversation with you that came to be popularly known as fellow Ghanaians. It was a time of great fear of the unknown, and the entire world felt at risk. I came into your homes regularly to tell you what the experts were discovering about the virus and what we should do. Now that we have seen the worst of the COVID-19, I can tell you that there were moments during those times when I was distraught. There were moments when I was in despair about the apparent inadequacy of our health facilities. And there were moments when I wondered if the dire predictions made about dead bodies on our streets would truly happen. But I knew that I owed it to all of us that as your president, I had to hold my nerve, show leadership, and take us out of the crisis. With your help and support, and the great mercies of the Almighty, we can say that we emerged from the ravages of the pandemic with one of the lowest mortality rates globally. In fact, Ghana's handling of the pandemic won universal acclaim. We could all see in real time the devastation that was being wreaked on economies during the pandemic. But I doubt that anyone imagined the extent of the damage. our economy here in Ghana, like many, many others around the globe, was thrown into turmoil. When I said, at the height of the COVID pandemic, that we knew what to do to bring the economy back to life, but not how to bring people back to life, it was not said in jest. We had done it before, and we were on course to doing it again. Ghana's economy grew by a remarkable 5.4% in 2021, signifying a strong recovery from the 0.5% growth recorded the previous year in 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. In fact, in the last quarter of 2021, our economy grew at 7%, only for the Russian invasion of Ukraine in the first quarter of this year to aggravate the effects of COVID-19 and plunge the global economy to even greater turmoil from which it has not yet recovered. The whole world has been taken aback by the speed with which inflation has eaten away people's incomes. Economies, big and small, have experienced over this year alone the highest rise in cost of living over a generation, the highest rise in government borrowing in over 50 years, the highest rise in inflation for 40 years, the steepest depreciation in their currencies to the US dollar over the last 30 years, the fastest peak in interest rates for over 20 years, and the greatest threat of unemployment in peacetime, with over 100 million people being pushed into extreme poverty. Between the end of 2019 and now, inflation in Ghana has increased by 5-fold, in Togo by 16-fold, by 11-fold in Senegal, and by 7-fold in Côte d'Ivoire. In truth, however, the fact that there are petrol queues in France does not make it more tolerable that the trottoir price from Kassoa to Circle has doubled in the past 1 year. Nor does it make it any more tolerable that the price of cooking oil goes up every other week. It is important to state mentioning the increases in prices worldwide is not meant to belittle the scope of suffering here, but simply to help us put things into some perspective and hopefully learn some useful lessons about how other people are coping. Fellow Ghanaians, this is why I'm back in your homes this evening, to ask for your support as we work together to get our economy back into good shape. In April, after the cabinet retreat of the first quarter, in recognizing the deteriorating macroeconomy, my government announced a 30% cut in budgeted discretionary expenditures and a 30% cut in salaries of the president, vice president, ministers, deputy ministers, MMDCs, and political office holders, amongst other measures. And since July, when the government took the difficult decision to go to the IMF to seek support, I've been speaking publicly at different fora on the subject of the economic difficulties we face, especially during my recent tours, so far, of 9 regions, and interacting directly with you, the Ghanaian people. It is also true that many of you have felt the need for me to come back to the fellow Ghanaians format that brings us all together. For us in Ghana, our reality is that our economy is in great difficulty. The budget drawn for the 2022 fiscal year, that is this year, has been thrown out of gear, disrupting our balance of payments and debt sustainability, and further exposing the structural weaknesses of our economy. We are in a crisis. I do not exaggerate when I say so. I cannot find an example in history when so many malevolent forces have come together at the same time. But, as we have shown in other circumstances, we should turn this crisis into an opportunity to resolve not just the short-term urgent problems, but the long-term structural problems that continue to bedevil our economy. I urge us all to see the decision to go to the International Monetary Fund in this light. We have gone to the fund to repair in the short term our public finances and restore our balance of payments, whilst we continue to work on the medium to long-term structural changes that are at the heart of our goal of constructing a resilient, robust Ghanaian economy and building a Ghana beyond aid. I'm able to report to you, my fellow Ghanaians, that the negotiations to secure a strong IMF program, which will support the implementation of our post-COVID-19 program for economic growth, and additional funding to support the 2023 budget and development program, are at advanced stages and are going well. We're determined to secure these arrangements quickly to bring back confidence and relief to Ghanaians. We're working towards reaching a deal with the IMF by the end of the year. This will give further credence to the measures government is taking to stabilize and grow the economy, as well as shore up our currency. I know that the increasing cost of living is the #1 concern for all of us. It is driven by fast escalating fuel prices at the pumps, which is caused by high crude oil prices on the world market and our depreciated currency. I know that this is putting intolerable pressure on families and businesses. I know that people are being driven to make choices they should not have to make. And I know that it has led to the devaluation of capital of traders and painfully accumulated savings. Furthermore, government is working to secure reliable and regular sources of affordable petroleum products for the Ghanaian market. It is expected that this arrangement, when successful, coupled with a stable currency, will halt the escalation of fuel prices and bring relief to us all. I hear from the market queens also that another factor fueling the high prices is the high margins that some traders are slapping on goods for fear of future higher costs. I say to our traders, we are all in this together. Please, let us be measured in the margins we seek. I have great respect and admiration for the ingenuity and hard work of our traders, especially those that take on the distribution of foodstuffs around the country. And I would hesitate to join in calling them names. I do make a heartfelt appeal that we all keep an eye out for the greater good and not try to make the utmost profits out of the current difficulties. In language that every market woman and indeed every trader in our country understands, let me say that the basic problem we face is that we're not making as much money as we need to spend. And what little money we do make is going to pay for the debts we have contracted to fund the development projects we must have. Not enough of us are paying our taxes. Not enough of us are producing to generate the revenues that we need. Nevertheless, my ambitions for Ghana remain high. All our children should be educated and trained with skills that will enable us to be competitive in the world. We need to close rapidly the infrastructure gap. We need to build a world-class healthcare system. And we need to build confidence in ourselves to make ours the happy and prosperous place it deserves to be. I believe we can and we will find the means to achieve these goals, even if the immediate measures we have to take are painful. At the just-ended cabinet retreat at Peduasi Lodge, my government agreed on the framework for the post-COVID-19 program for economic growth and the IMF support for its implementation, as well as the work being done by the Ministry of Finance in preparation for the 2023 budget. At the retreat, we took some firm decisions that should put us on the path that will take our nation out of the current economic difficulties. Let me try and give you an outline of the main decisions without getting into the technical language that baffles many of us. To restore and sustain debt sustainability, we plan to reduce our total public debt to GDP ratio to some 55% in present value terms by 2028, with the servicing of our external debt pegged at not more than 18% of our annual revenue also by 2028. We're committed to improving the revenue collection effort from the current tax revenue to GDP ratio of 13% to between 18 and 20% to be competitive with our peers in the West African region. The Ghana Revenue Authority is rolling out an extensive set of measures to support the enhanced revenue mobilization. All of us must do our patriotic duty and support the GRA in this exercise. We're aiming to restore and sustain macroeconomic stability within the next 3 to 6 years, with a focus on ensuring debt sustainability to promote durable and inclusive growth while protecting the poor. We've decided to review the reforms in the energy sector, the capping of statutory funds, implementation of the Exemptions Act, and a new property rate regime. We've also decided to continue with the policy of 30% cut in the salaries of political office holders, including the President, the Vice President, ministers, deputy ministers, MMDCs, and SOE appointees in 2023, just as we will continue with the 30% cut in discretionary expenditures of ministries, departments, and agencies. My fellow Ghanaians, the success of our efforts at diversifying the structure of the Ghanaian economy from an import-based one to a value-added exporting one is what will, in the long term, help strengthen our economy. We're making some progress with the 1D1F, but our current situation requires that we take some more stringent measures to discourage the importation of goods that we can and do produce here. To this end, we will review the standards required for imports into the country. We will prioritize the imports, as well as review the management of our foreign exchange reserves in relation to imports of products such as rice, poultry, vegetable oil, toothpicks, pasta, fruit juice, bottled water, and ceramic tiles, and others, which with intensified government support and that of the banking sector, can be manufactured and produced in sufficient quantities in Ghana. Government will in May 2023, that is 6 months from now, review the situation. We must, as a matter of urgent national security, reduce our dependence on imported goods and enhance our self-reliance, as demanded by our overarching goal of creating a Ghana beyond aid. Much as we believe in free trade, we must work to ensure that the majority of goods in our shops and marketplaces are those we produce and grow here in Ghana. That is why we have to support our farmers and domestic industries, including those created under the 1D1F initiative, to help reduce our dependence on imports and allow us the opportunity to export more and more of our products and guarantee a stable currency that will present a high level of predictability for citizens and the business community. Exports, not imports, must be our mantra. Accra, after all, hosts the headquarters of the Secretariat of the African Continental Free Trade Area. Fellow Ghanaians, as the French would say, l'argent n'aime pas le bruit. To wit, money does not like noise. Sika mpe dede. Where there's chaos, where there's noise, where there's unrest, you will not find money. If you talk down your money, it will go down. If you allow some unidentifiable person to talk down your money, it will go down. The recent turbulence on the financial markets was caused by low inflows of foreign exchange and was made worse in the last 2 to 3 weeks, in particular, by the activities of speculators and the black market. An anonymous 2-minute audio message on a WhatsApp platform predicting a so-called haircut on government bonds sent all of us into banks and forex bureaus to dump our CDs, and before we knew it, the CD had depreciated even further. All of us can play a part in helping to strengthen the CD by having confidence in the currency and avoiding speculation. Let us keep our CD as the good store of value it is. To those who make it a habit of publishing falsehoods, which result in panic in the system, I say to them that the relevant state agencies will act against such persons. Indeed, some steps have been taken to restore order in the foreign exchange markets, and we're already beginning to see some calm returning. We will not relent until order is completely restored. The following actions have been taken thus far. 1. Enhanced supervisory action by the Bank of Ghana in the Forex Bureau markets and the black market to flush out illegal operators, as well as ensuring that those permitted to operate legally abide by the market rules. Already, some Forex bureaus have had their licenses revoked, and this exercise will continue until complete order is restored in the sector. 2. Fresh inflows of dollars are providing liquidity to the foreign exchange market and addressing the pipeline demand. 3. The Bank of Ghana has given its full commitment to the commercial banks to provide liquidity to ensure the wheels of the economy continue to run in a stabilized manner till the IMF program kicks in and the financing assurances expected from other partners also come in. 4. government is working with the Bank of Ghana and the oil-producing and mining companies to introduce a new legal and regulatory framework to ensure that all foreign exchange earned from operations in Ghana are initially paid to banks domiciled in Ghana to help boost the domestic foreign exchange market. And 5, the Bank of Ghana will continue and enhance its gold purchase program. I'm confident that these immediate measures, designed to change the structure of our balance of payment flows, sanitize the foreign exchange market to ensure that the banks and Forex Bureau operate along international best practices, together with strengthened supervision, will go a long way to sanitize our foreign exchange market and make it more resilient against external vulnerabilities going forward. Over the course of this week, I've had several fruitful engagements with the Trades Union Congress and Organized Labor, the Ghana Employers Association, the Association of Ghana Industries, the Ghana Association of Banks, the Private Enterprise Federation, the Association of Forex Bureau Operators, the Association of Market Queens and Women, all of whom represent important stakeholders of the Ghanaian economy. They expressed their concerns and proposed solutions on how best to solve our problems. I've been encouraged by the enthusiasm of these interest groups to help government to address these challenges, and I intend to continue these engagements with other groups. I also want to assure all Ghanaians that no individual or institutional investor, including pension funds, in government treasury bills or instruments, will lose their money as a result of our ongoing IMF negotiations. There will be no haircuts. So I urge all of you to ignore the false rumors. Just as in the banking sector cleanup, government ensured that the 4.6 million depositors affected by the exercise did not lose their deposits. And minim sɛ asetena mu ayɛ den. Nanso mo bi ampa aba. Monkɔ so nyɛ gyidie wɔ aban no mu. Nhyehyɛeɛ a ɛtumi ma free SHS, any one district, one factory, ɛbaa mu no. Nhyehyɛeɛ a ɛboa ma yɛtumi pam corona yareɛ no firi ɔman no mu. Saa nso na maban ɛtoto nneɛma yie. Saa mmerɛ ɛma ahotɔ aba ɔman mu. Na minim sɛ gyidie no ɛwɔ me mu no ɛkyerɛ sɛ ɛko no ɛyɛ Onyankopɔn ne ko. Ayɛmɛ laka ni bi ewa si nye ka hyegbe ye nye ya no ni nye na hemo ke yeli ake gbejiano to ni hani free SHS bamiye gbejiano to ni hani this one district one factory bamiye gbejiano to ni hani wonye wo hwe corona hela keshi wo mana miye na kano ni miamlalo bato gbejiano to koni hijole abami ejake miye hemo ke yeli ake ta nyumotani. My government has always been cognizant of the importance of implementing policies and social interventions to relieve Ghanaians of hardships. It is for this reason that over the first 5 years in office, the government reduced electricity tariffs cumulatively by 10.9%. We provided free water and electricity, as well as reduced tariffs for the entire population during a whole year of the COVID-19 pandemic. We increased the share of the District Assembly's Common Fund to persons with disabilities by 50%. We exempted Kayaye from market tolls. We expanded the LEAP by 150,000 beneficiaries. We expanded school feeding from 1.6 million children to 2.1 million children. We restore teacher and nursing training allowances. We absorb the cost of BC and WACC exam registrations for parents. No guarantor is now required to obtain student loans. The Ghana card is sufficient. And we have implemented free TVET, as well as free senior high school education. It is obvious, fellow Ghanaians, that you have a government that cares. We're determined to restore stability to the economy and provide relief. All of us are in this together and asking for your support to rescue Ghana from the throes of this economic crisis. I have total confidence on our ability to work our way out of our current difficulties. We're not afraid of hard work. We will triumph, as we have triumphed many times before. Let us unite and rally around our republic, its institutions and its democratic values, and insist that under God we will emerge victorious from our current difficulties. For this too shall pass, as the battle is the Lord's. I'll be coming regularly to keep you updated about the measures your government is making to move our country forward and tackle our economic challenges. God bless us all and our homeland Ghana, and make her great and strong. Thank you for your attention, and have a good evening.
President Akufo-Addo giving us that address on Ghana's economy today, and a number of issues that were raised in there that we'll be going through with the guests here on the probe tonight. We'll be taking your views as well, where your expectations met. At least you're hearing that there will be no haircut, he's urging, and there will be some 30% in cuts for all political appointees, including the president. We did not hear what happens to the size of government. We know there were calls for a reduction in the size of government. We'll be going through some of the measures, he says, in the interim that they'll be putting through macroeconomic stability in the next 3 to 6 years, a number of issues that he's raised there. But more importantly, many of you were hoping to hear whether indeed there will be haircuts or not. For him, he wants to assure all Ghanaians that no individual or institution, investor, including pension funds in government treasury bills or instruments, will lose their money as a result of the ongoing IMF negotiations. There will be no haircuts, I quote him. So he's urging all of you to ignore the false rumors. And also, he's talking about the cedi, Sikam Pedede, as according to what we've heard from the president, and that those who are peddling these falsehoods, state agencies are coming after you. We all have a role to play in strengthening the cedi. We'll go through them, but let me quickly bring in my guest tonight, and hopefully we'll hear from you as well. I know you're typing, tweeting on Twitter and all our social media platforms. I'll take all your views, worry not. We're here because of you. And let me start with Mr. Martin Pebu. He's with me in the studios. I also have via Zoom Dr. Priscilla Chumesi-Bafo. She's a senior lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School. We'll hear the views of GUTA. We'll hear the views of the GPRTU. There were those that the president met. They met organized labor. He met with the Ghana Employers Association, the Association of Ghana Industries, Forex Bureau operators. He also met with Private Enterprise Federation, the Association of Market Queens and Women, amongst others. For him, he consulted broadly and widely before that cabinet retreat, for which reason he's bringing out these measures. Already, he says, the Bank of Ghana is clamping down on Forex Bureau markets and black markets to flash out illegal operators. What did you hear? Were you satisfied with the president's address? Are you hopeful that the message from the president inspired hope such that we can turn around the economic fortunes of this country? Mr. Martin Pebu, welcome.
Thank you, Emefa.
Let me check on my Zoom as well and be sure that I have correct sound. Okay, but I'll check on that sound shortly from Zoom. But let me start with you in the studios. Once again, you've heard from the president. One of the calls you made loudly was that the president ought to address the nation. that has happened. Commendable, right?
Yes, but too little, too late. Too little, too late. This call had made long ago, but he wouldn't listen. He doesn't hear. He wouldn't listen. The damage is being caused. And, I mean, I'm sure you're asking the speech, what do I make of it, right? Now,
Inspired hope?
It doesn't cut master. Not at all. No. This is not sufficient. Look, in fact, what he has said is just like basically listening to candidate Akufo-Addo in 2016. Just like what Samson said on the program supported by other panelists yesterday. Sloganeering, that's what it is. Yes. Because you heard the president famously say that he wanted to change the Gettysburg economy in 18 months. In 18 months, this is 6 years down the line, and he comes to say the same thing. Long term, we have to change the structure of the economy. We've always known it, but he didn't have what it takes to change the structure of the economy. He diagnosed the problem that we need to change it. He came, one district, one factory, was not sufficient. No, it was not. Okay, so it just tells you that, no, the president doesn't have what it takes to drive that change. So it still comes back to the same position that, Mr. President, respectfully, to show that you have honor, you just have to step down. Because, you remember another famous post that he had, the video is still around. You see that he says, when President Kufuor was leaving, 1 cedi, $1, and Mills Mahama, $1, 3 cedis. If it were him, he will resign. $1, 3 cedis. If it were him, he will resign. Today, the most charitable one we can give is, let's say, $1, 13 cedis. Why is Mr. President still in office? Why is he still in office? So look, it's all still slogans. It's all still slogans. Nothing is changed because let's just hold the president's feet to the fire. He said he would change the structure of the economy, this Gettysburg economy.
But you've heard him. He's mentioned that they will restore and sustain debt sustainability. They plan to reduce our total public debt to GDP ratio to some 55%. And they're hoping that will be done by the year 2028.
Not today.
We've also heard him talk about the macroeconomic stability the next 3 to 6 years. And the issue about the city, for instance, is the likes of you, the comments that you make, he says, Sika Mpedidi. And that if we continue to make a lot of noise about the city, it will not thrive. And that comments like this does not help the city.
No, that's very disingenuous. His Excellency didn't have to make that comment at all. Did you hear His Excellency talk about their unbridled borrowing? Did you hear him mention that they borrowed recklessly? Borrowed without checking, without necessary economic models to check the impact. I heard Mr. Kwampieni mention that every budget, if you say you are borrowing, we borrowed about 8 billion euro bond. What was the accompanying impact? The economic modeling. No, His Excellency shouldn't have made that comment that it's comments that are driving down the city. He didn't talk about the unbridled borrowing. When he was in opposition, he said, look, he could make enough money from fighting corruption alone to take care of free SHS. That was his answer. When the BBC asked him, how are you going to fund free SHS? He said, the fight against corruption alone. And you see the recent Auditor General's report. You see the misapplication of funds, all those things running, well in excess of 15 billion, right? Yes, so what happened to that fight? Look, even me sitting here, Dr. Anamzoe, there's this popular case. People came together to steal 5 million Ghana. Anamzoe reported it over 5 months. The president did nothing. He did nothing. I also came and sat here on Newsfire, reported it several months down the line. The CEO of the Northern Development Authority is still in office. The officers who aided him are still in office. The president is rather being interested in shielding public officers from prosecution, from accountability. There are other examples we can give. So it still comes back to one word, sloganeering. Sloganeering. You see, he didn't address the fact that he had promised that he would change the structure of this economy in 18 months. And not even in the last election, they promised to pay rent. Yes, they promised to pay rent. You see Nana Kumia on Ghana Web. We will pay rent for young people. So where is the rent? Now rent, no way. So, Emefa,
And at this point, you've heard him mention that indeed we are in a crisis situation.
No, that's not.
The country is faced with a crisis. At least he's admitted that this is where we are. We are at a crossroads and all hands on deck for that to happen. They've decided to review the reforms in the energy sector. There will be capping of statutory funds, implementation of the exemptions of Act, a new property rate regime as well.
That's more taxes.
Yeah, and they've decided to also continue with a policy of 30% cut in the salaries of political office holders, including the president, the vice president, ministers, deputy ministers. At least these are measures that...
The president is not, from everything he's saying, he's not accepting responsibility. Accepting responsibility for his misgovernance for the past 6 years has just one result. True acceptance of responsibility has one result, which is that, please, Ghanaians, I'm sorry, I wish to resign. That is real responsibility. These ones are words. These ones are words. You see that he's not even apologetic for his misgovernance. No, you are not bringing us together. That is not it. He's rather blaming it on Russia, Ukraine. How? Didn't you see Zimbabwe? After COVID, they decided to farm wheat, and they had a bumper harvest. What are we doing? You see, Operation Feed Yourself.
But you heard him. He says most goods that should fill our shops should be those that we produce and grow here.
But all these 6 years, what happened? These 6 years. So he's had all the time in this world, and he's spanned it. So true responsibility for the mess is caused as the unbridled borrowing, the huge number of ministers, increasing the number of presidential staff. Apart from that, you see, you didn't even hear him saying that he's cutting down the 1,000 persons in the Jubilee House from about 300 or so during the Mahama era. You now have about 1,000 presidential staffers. What about cutting down those numbers?
But he's cutting their salaries by 30%.
No, that's not sufficient.
Enough.
That's not sufficient. And you also heard that others have told him that he should come down from 85. He should come down. You hear the Citizen Coalition, that's 70. You hear the minority saying 70.
You've heard the former president.
And then you hear even his own majority leader, Oseche Mensah. He also has a recommendation for a lower number. All of this, the president is swept under the carpet. So it's only one word, sloganeering. The president is not in a mood to do what it requires. Okay. Rather, he's planning to increase taxes. You increase property taxes. Yes.
I'll come back to you on what you were actually expecting to hear from the president in that address and going forward. But let me bring in Dr. Priscilla Chumisi-Bafo, also joining us via Zoom this evening. We are grateful for your time here on The Probe, and we'll take your comments as well, you watching us on via social media, and all the comments that you're posting. We'll take time and go through them as well on whether your expectations were met from that presidential address. Dr. Chumisi, let me find out from you, first of all, your initial reaction listening to the president. Were your expectations met?
Thank you very much, Emefa. Good evening, and good evening to your listeners and viewers. I believe that overall we are expecting, and for that matter, we expected the president to come and instill hope. And, when you look at the statements, his demeanor, this is a leader who is acknowledging the challenge that we face. And so for that matter, you find that at certain stanzas in the speech, you could tell that he was putting himself in the shoes of the ordinary Ghanaian. The fact that people are losing their savings, being robbed due to high inflation and depreciation of the currency. And as a leader in turbulent times like this is what one expects. So for me, I think that the president came to sort of speak to the ordinary Ghanaian and for that matter, settle the level of uncertainty that is around. And you can tell that he is giving hints as to agreements with the IMF, where likely the agreements have reached and that we probably will get some finality by the end of the year. All these are issues that will sort of settle the high level of speculation that is occurring. Because, for example, the major challenges we are facing now, we are looking at the sharp depreciation of the currency, which is also feeding into pricing of goods and services. And indeed, a lot of people are panicking. Market women are increasing prices because some want to cash in Others also are not sure whether they'll get the value to restock. So in moments like this, you would want a leader to speak and also assuage the fears of people in the short term. But as to how effective this will be in the short to medium term, these are issues that will solve problems and settle the uncertainty in the short term. But in the medium term, we need to see that actions are being taken. And for that matter, you could tell that he outlines a number of issues that they are trying to use to tackle. These are no new issues. I must admit, these are issues that we have spoken about, particularly with regulation and tightening the supervision of the forest market. It is something that needs to be done so that people who speculate to make money on the depreciation of the currency, their activities can be brought to the barest minimum.
Well, but listening to him, admittedly, you said that most of the things are not new. And we're hoping that by tomorrow, what would change? Listening to the president today, will anything change going forward? Because most of the things we're hearing is more like a long term. The reviewing standards required for imports into the country, prioritizing imports, the issues that he's talked about when it comes to the CD, BOG clamping down on certain forex bureaus, amongst others. Going forward, what will happen by the end of the year? What would change, you would say?
So indeed, by the end of the year, the expectation is that with the inflow of certain foreign resources that are coming in through, for example, cocoa syndicated loans, other negotiations that the president is hinting, for example, for the importation of fuel, for instance, we expect some level of stability. And particularly at this moment in time, what we are looking for is stability in the macroeconomic indicators, stability in prices, for instance. So if we can get the depreciation rate to stabilize, then indeed you could say that there will be some level of predictability in the economy, because as it stands, nobody can predict anything at all. And so based on that, I would say that, yes, this is a peculiar situation in the sense that it is not a health challenge where you'd come to tell people to stay home and wash their hands. These are realities in terms of living standards of people. But the level of uncertainty that existed prior to this speech was quite high. And then we expect that policymakers and the president, who is the driver of that seat, to come and tell us what exactly are being done. But truth be told, I particularly was not expecting anything different, because the reality is that the theory is there. It is a fact that we need to follow. We have to generate enough revenue. We have to cut down on expenditure. These are issues that we know, and we have to go get to work with it. Issues of property taxes, we have spoken about it years on end. The reality is that the people that own resources are chipping more, and on the other hand, on the expenditure side, we need to cut our quota according to our fabric or whatever. So in that sense, you can tell that the president is hinting that, yes, GRA will be going out. These are difficult times, and on that route, I believe that a bit of caution needs to be taken, because we are cutting back, right? And then the situation is quite biting. And if GRA is also on the doors of people demanding a lot of tax revenue, then it means that it becomes a bit unbearable. But for me, there is nothing in there that was not expected. The reality is that we need to get back to basics, generate enough revenue, and spend according to what we have to bring down the extent of borrowing, and also bring back our debt to sustainable levels, which is what is required before the IMF program anyway.
Okay, so the specific announcement that there will be no haircut, and then also the depreciation of the cedi, the issue about speculations and security agencies clamping down on such persons who are actually causing the speculations, amongst others. Are you hopeful that the market will start reacting from tomorrow?
I believe, I think so too, because you see, in the past 3 days, when you monitor the forex market, you see that there is some level of stability. Speculators have bought the dollar, hoping that the CD will continue to depreciate so that they would sell it back and make money on what they bought. But the reality is that as they see that there are other avenues of foreign currency that are coming in, and for that matter, the prices will not be rising as expected, you find that all those people on the fringes that were speculating will begin to sell their dollars, for instance, and that will ease the pressure. And also the fact that now we probably would have to regulate the imports sector to see and know what is relevant. All these are issues that could have significant impact, if for nothing at all, introduce some level of stability on the forex market. And when you look at it, the foundation of the problem we are facing, whether it is the rising inflation, rising cost of living and all, is because the currency is depreciating too fast. And for that matter, people are uncomfortable.
Okay.
And lose value in their resources.
Please stay with me. Let me bring in other stakeholders also that the president met with before we arrived at this particular presidential speech, and then also that cabinet retreat. But the GUTA, the Ghana Union of Traders Association, also the GPRTU were also met together with PEF, amongst others. Let me start off with GUTA, for instance, because there are some key things that will be happening in terms of imports as well. We're not too sure when exactly, but we're told that in May 2023, that is 6 months from now, they'll review the situation when it comes to the standards for imports into the country, and hopefully the goods that we see in our shops should be those that we produce and grow in the country. GUTA, you've raised concerns. You had to close your shops at some point temporarily and suspended the action. Now that you've heard from the president, are you hopeful that things will change, Mr. Paddy?
Thank you very much. And let me say good evening to your viewers and your listeners this evening. I think the president did what Ghanaians were asking for. Ghanaians were asking the president to talk, and he has spoken. And all that president said is something, all that we know already. He just said everything that we know already that is going on in the country, in the business community, and in business front.
When you say things you know already, how do you mean?
Yes, black marketing. When you say black market, in terms of dollar CD transaction, we know the black markets are there. So all that we've been saying is that in the country, we have a challenge of institutional failures. They failed it. Who is supposed to monitor the activities of black marketing? It's supposed to be Bank of Ghana. If Bank of Ghana has relaxed and relaxed on its effort to monitor the activities of the black marketing, that's what I'm saying. It's something that we already know. So the institutions of this country has failed us big time. That's where we find ourselves now. For example, GIPC is there, and GIPC is supposed to regulate activities of foreigners into the trading community and the trading sector. But GIPC gives certificates out, doesn't monitor, doesn't evaluate the activities of these foreigners. And we see capital flights all over. They put pressure on our foreign exchange. These are some of the things we've been complaining about. So it's something that we know already. So the president has just come to reiterate all that we know already. And when it comes to import, it's a demand and supply factors. Consumers are demanding for a product. Supply chain is there. Cost of production in the country is extremely, one of the areas I was expecting President to talk about. Cost of production in the country is extremely expensive. Production is not attractive. What is it going to do for people to move into production for export? That is why even manufacturers are running into trading, because production and our tax rate in the country is also extremely expensive. Our tax position now, cumulatively, is about 50% on imports. If you are importing goods into the country, when you talk about VAT components, it's about 19.2. So our tax composition and our tax rate is extremely expensive. And the few people who are in the tax net are the same people who are bearing the burdens. So we've been complaining, why can't you make the tax component affordable so that you open the tax net, you get wider people into the net? Almost about 70% of Ghanaians are outside the tax net. So how do you get revenue to develop the country? So these are the things these are some of the things we're expecting President to talk about. What are you going to do to open the tax net, to rope in more people into the net, so that we know in the class 1, mathematics. If more, let's divide. So we all have a little, so that government can get the needed revenue to develop the country. But he has spoken. But at the end of it all, in his statement, we are looking up to IMF. But where we say IMF is it's not the solution, because we've gone to IMF over a period of time, over and over, and we still come back to square one. So we have to move from that aspect of looking up to IMF almost every time. What are we going to do internally? We know there are external shocks. We know Ukraine, Russia war, we know COVID-19. But internally, what are we doing to prepare ourselves in terms of these shocks? What is the country doing internally? These are some of the things you look for, internal factors that we can hold on to. But as it stands now, our economy are in the hands of foreigners. Look at our telecoms, they are for foreigners. Look at our banking sector for foreigners. Look at the manufacturing for foreigners. Look at even trading. Look at all the malls around the country are for foreigners. So by all means, there will be pressure on our foreign exchange. This is where we find ourselves, and it's a difficult challenge for the country.
Let me find out, Mr. Paddy. I know that you engaged the president following the shutting down of your shops, amongst others. You met the Council of State subsequently before this cabinet retreat. You were also engaged by government or the president on this. Were your inputs included in this particular speech or this address that we heard the president?
Yeah, we made an input into, as we identify the problems and we also find solutions to the problem. So we made an input. And some of the things we were telling President that let's look at the short-term measures. You know, we have the short and the medium and the long term. So the short term is, what can we do to make price stability? Like we complained earlier on, almost every day price keep on increasing. So to have price stability, why can't you peg the rate of calculating duty at the port? So quarterly, for the next 3 months to December, when you are going to clear your goods at the port, maybe the exchange rate should be about 10.2%, 10.2, so that you know for the next 3 months, when you are going to clear goods at the port, you are going to use 10.2. But as it stands now, almost every Tuesday, the rate changes. So that is why you don't see this price stability. Well, if I cleared goods last week and I paid 12,000 Ghana cedis, and this week I'm going to pay the same quantity of goods, I'm paying 14,000. Obviously, my price will change. So we don't see price stability in the market. So we made this proposal. For duty purpose, can you peg the dollar at the port? And then we also made a proposal to interest rate. Now, Bank of Ghana policy rate is about 24%. And commercial banks are giving it out almost about 38 to 40%. So the interest rate is extremely expensive. So we said, why can't, as a regulator, Bank of Ghana as a regulator, why can't you cap the interest rate for businesses, so that between your policy rate and the interest rate, the margin should not go beyond, now as I said, it's almost about 14. So the margin should not go beyond, certain countries have done it and it's working for them. So why can't we do the same? So can you cap the interest rate for trading communities, so that when we go to the bank to borrow, we can get a cheaper credit to trade and do business? Manufacturers cannot go for bank loan facility at the rate of 34, 38%, and even break business in business. That's why manufacturers are struggling. That is why manufacturers are not competitive to other neighboring countries. The same product can be produced here maybe about 13 Ghana cedis. You go to China, produce there about 3 cedis. Look at the difference. So our manufacturers are not competitive. After we've gone to buy and pay all the duties, it's still cheaper than that which is produced here. The same quality, the same quantity. But it's still why? Because manufacturing is not attractive. And
so this new mantra that the president wants us to go with, export, not import, is it achievable in the short term? Are we able to move away and start going with this particular mantra?
No, where I say I don't think it's achievable in the shortest possible time, because cost of borrowing is expensive. Nobody will go to borrow at that rate to go into manufacturing. It's not possible. You can't even break even. You can't go and borrow at the rate of 38% to go into industry. It's not going to work out. Meanwhile, your competitor out there, just close to you, is borrowing at the rate of 3%, 5%, and 10%, and you are producing the same item. So manufacturing is not competitive. So it's not achievable in the shortest possible time. Until interest rates come down, if government can come up with a policy, there's anybody who's going to go into manufacturing, we have some fund for you. You can borrow at the rate of between 10 to 15%. A lot of people will move into manufacturing, but as it stands, no manufacturer will borrow at the rate of 38% and break even in business. It's going to run out of business. Even trading community are running out of business. No businessman, as it stands now, can borrow at the rate of 40% and maximize profits, even break even. It's not possible.
So, Mr. Paddy, in letting you off, did the president inspire hope in you and your members with this address this evening?
Ghanaians were asking for that the president should speak, and he has spoken. So going forward, we're going to peruse it and see where we need to support government, because we all need to develop the country for a betterment of the nation. President has spoken. It's early this yet. We'll go and review his speech, and we'll come out again.
Mr. Paddy, we are grateful. That's the PRO of Guta. Let me bring in Samuel Amoa with the GPRTU. Also, they are key when it comes to transport, and they've increased transport fares starting on the tomorrow. I'm sure it's just on Monday, and 19%. They were asking for 40% after their meeting with the president. They were able to come down to 19%. We've been hearing from the president on what they're going to do when it comes to petrol prices, such that we will not be affected by the world, the shocks from the world, so that we can have some stable pricing amongst others. Ms. Amoa, you are thankful to the president for the speech this evening?
Yeah, thank you very much. Let me say good evening to your viewers out there. Yes, we've had a president, and what I would say is every driver is looking forward, for the fuel price to come down. That is our ultimate goal, because it's the fuel price that controls everything. And if I recall, when we met the president on last Tuesday, and then as you rightly said, we presented 40%. But finally, we arrived at 19%, of which we're not pleased. We were not that happy. But anyway, what can we do? We hold it like that. And one of the things that we told the president was that, these days you go and sleep, and the next day you see the fuel prices goes up. And we've also heard that the next pricing window, the fuel is going to go up again. But he gave us that assurance, because we made him understood that. Per the agreement we had with them, anytime the fuel price
Mr. Amoa, just give me a minute. Let me just step in and say goodbye to our radio audience on Joy 99.7 FM. A Walk with Jesus is coming up next, but we are still live on the Joy News channel. We are live on myjoyonline.com, all our social media platforms. Mr. Amoa, sorry to cut in. You can go on. You were talking about the shocks from the next pricing window, hopefully that it will not affect prices.
Yes, as I was saying, we made the president understood that per the agreement that we had with them, anytime the fuel price will go up to 10% threshold, then we also have the opportunity to increase our fares. So we told the president that the next pricing window is likely the fuel is going to go up again. And should it goes up, what we have to do, then that means we have to come for another negotiation, of which we as transporters, we are not happy whenever our fares goes up, because it reduces our business. Mm-hmm. But the assurance he gave to us is that they are working on things to at least bring some certain things that will bring the fuel price down by making sure that the dollar rate will come down. So our expectations is that by this time the fuel price will come down. But the unfortunate thing is that the Tuesday that we met the president and he gave us that 19%, the next day the fuel price went up again, of which we are not pleased about it. So this speech that has come now, we are still not happy, because we are not seeing any change. The fuel price goes up, and as of now, even the 19% that the president gave us, and should it go up again, what do we have to do? Then that means transport fares has to go up again. So all our expectations is that the fuel price must come down, and we are not, seeing anything of that of such.
So in that speech, you were expecting to hear something directly to you and your members in terms of what will happen going forward. Did you get that?
Actually, if I heard the president right, we heard him saying about making sure that the cedi will gain its weight for the dollar to come down. And we all know that whenever the dollar goes up, that affects everything, including the OMCs going out there to go and buy the fuel to come to the country to sell. So that is what we heard. But the thing is, he has said it. But the question is it going to happen? Because this is something that we do here. that they are working on things, the fuel will come down. That is why way back from May, we were supposed to increase our transport fares from July. We didn't do that because of the promises they keep
But
giving
your
us,
president,
that the fuel
your
prices will come
president
down.
has told you it will happen. Why are you not hopeful it will happen? Your president says it will happen. Why don't you think it will happen?
The reason is that this is some promises that we do here, because as I told you earlier on, we were supposed to increase this fare way back in July. We wrote to the ministries and then we're given that assurance that we should hold on and that the fuel price will come down. And that is what we were holding on up to this time, that it was just going up to this time. So as he has come out to say they are working on things for it to come down. Yes, he has said it, but myself as individual, I'm not that convinced.
Well, Mr. Amwa, we are grateful for your time. But going forward, do you think that anything will change after the speech?
We are praying. We are praying that all our expectations that things will change for the fuel price. As transporters, our expectations is that the fuel price will come down so that we will also, enjoy our business.
Well, that's Samuel Amwa with the GPRTU, Ghana Private Road Transport Union. There we also heard from Guta earlier. These are some of the stakeholders that the president engaged with before the cabinet retreat and then the speech that we are hearing this evening. A number of measures that the president says will be implemented in the medium to long term. The macroeconomic stability, we are seeing it in the next 3 to 6 years, amongst others. And Mr. Apawu is with me in the studios. We'll be coming to you also in your homes also shortly via the telephone lines, briefly to tell us what you actually got from the president's speech, and did it meet your expectations in particular, and what you would want to see going forward change at least towards the end of the year, such that we can see a turnaround with Ghana's economy. Mr. Apawu is with me in the studios. Mr. Apawu, so we've been hearing from GPRTU, we've heard from Guta, we've heard from Dr. Prista Chumisi as well. At least most people agree that nothing really new is coming up today, but issues about exports, not imports, being our mantra going forward. Are you hopeful that is achievable?
That's the one I made the point over and over. That's why you refer to as the Gettysburg economy. That too much, we're not adding that much value, right? And so when he came, 18 months, now we've done 6 years, right? I'm seeing some of the comments on social media. It's painful. Look, sometimes it's difficult for me to comment this way, but there's nothing else we have to do. The Constitution says that citizens must also play their roles, okay? And part of the role play is that we speak truth to power. Because sometimes when I look at some of the comments on the platform, the ones from MPP sympathizers, they say they are not happy. They expect that we should applaud the president. But there's nothing new. Like you heard what the GPRTU said. So bottom line, the price of fares from Accra to Kaswa is staying the same tomorrow. The price of Kenke is staying the same at 3 cedis. Cocoa, that has increased from 1 cedi to 3 cedis. Tomorrow morning will still be 3 cedis, right? Kufuor gallon, that's the oil. That oil that was 500 has now got to 1,002. Tomorrow, Kufuor gallon oil will still be 1,200 cedis, right? Nido, which about 2 weeks ago was 45 cedis and was increased to 60 cedis a few days ago. Tomorrow will still be 60 cedis, and so on. I mean, I've been checking prices over even the past 2 weeks, right? And so what the prices that increased about 2 weeks ago, tomorrow morning when we go to the market, will still be the same. So in such a case, it's difficult to applaud the president. It's extremely, I mean, I'll be disingenuous. I've seen people come. Even, you see, Occupy Ghana said what? The president should own the problem. 3 points. Own the problems. Fight like a warrior, okay? Let me see the Occupy Ghana thing. Yeah, and then, so own the problem, adopt a warlike posture, and bring people together, bring people around the table. Let's go over. Own the problem.
But the president brought people around the table. Yeah. You saw the stakeholder engagement before this cabinet retreat. That was not enough. You consulted broadly before arriving at this particular speech.
Respectfully, no. Adopt a warlike posture and own the problem. You see, he has still not owned the problem. He's blaming Russia and Ukraine and blaming the pandemic. You don't know the billions of dollars we got from the IMF and the other donor parties. We got over $3 billion, not Ghana. You see, today, you see the notice from the World Bank saying that we failed to account for the money. Have you seen the notice? It's come that over 10 months now, we have not accounted for the money. Look at it. The letter from the World Bank was the date.
The Education Ministry has been reacting, mentioning that indeed
October
that's supposed
21.
to be audited by the audit service. That has since been done and is being sent. At least we've been hearing from the Education Ministry on that.
So it had to take the World Bank to come. We are not in compliance, right? So you see, MFI is difficult, but that is the nature of the thing. Who supported President Kufuor more than me? You check 2016 election, you check TV3, I was all rooting for him, saying that no, this is the real angel coming to save Ghana from the vampire at that time. I thought JDM was a vampire, right? Yes, even as of 2020, the elections, I was still supporting, hoping that, I was thinking that to be practical for politicians, you know, the first term he owes people and all that, so he was trying to pay the debts in the first term, and so the second term will be different. And he's repeated the same thing.
But
so
it appears that we are downplaying the fact that we are in a difficult time. You've heard him mention that the comparison is not to belittle our woes. We've seen the situation in other countries, but he admits in that speech that by comparing our situation to other countries is not to belittle our woes. We are definitely in a crisis, and that's not even an exaggeration.
Very good.
So is it the case that we are just criticizing the president for criticizing's sake?
Far from that. He has just led us into a ditch. They've mismanaged the unbridled borrowing. MFA, let's ask. Didn't Togo go through the same? Is Togo not part of the world? Is their currency the worst performing? Burkina Faso, you know, we buy a lot of tomatoes from Burkina Faso. They are even grappling with insurgents, terrorists here and there. Yet we import millions of dollars of tomatoes from Burkina Faso, Nigeria, right? And so on and so forth, Côte d'Ivoire. Why is it that their currency is not the worst performing in the world, and Ghana has the worst performing currency? Why? And then you compare it. Some of the countries have created jobs. Ours, look at it. Millions of graduates are home. They can't find work. And I'm like, so what does it take to do Operation Feed Yourself? Operation Feed Yourself. A champion tried it until date. This is one of the best things that he left with us. If you read Professor Apawu Ajimanduye's book, that's for those who are too young to have followed the history. You read Professor Apawu Ajimanduye's book, he talks about, extols a champion for the Operation Feed Yourself. Look, let's repeat with all the strength we can master. The president in opposition said that this is a Gettysburg economy and that in 18 months he was going to change things. Please, that hasn't happened. And we are begging the president in the name of God. There is a place for honor. That's why the pledge that we used to sing in school, it says that I promise on my honor to be faithful and loyal. Anna, I promise on my honor. We are not just saying the hard letter of the word, but there is a place even in our pledge for Anna. You said $1, 3 cedis. If you were the one, you will resign. Under your watch, it has moved from $1, about 4 cedis, or even call it 4 cedis, 50 pesos. Now, the most charitable is 13 cedis. So you should have resigned years ago. So, Mr. President, it's your own words. Like a certain lawyer said, this is poetic justice. Poetic justice.
What will be the alternative then?
The alternative, so let the speaker, so he goes with Phantom Whiskey, Dr. Mahmoud Baumia. So by the constitution, then it goes to the speaker. And of course, we all recognize that because the speaker is not of the MPP stock, the speaker should form a government of national unity. And within 3 months, let's have an election. Let the people decide.
But the plan that he's put out up until 2023, 2028, amongst others, you don't think that we're able to go through with it? Because he's saying we are making some progress with the 1D, 1F, but our current situation requires that we take some more stringent measures to discourage the importation of goods that we can do and produce here. At least you hear the president trying to unify the country in terms of the things that he thinks we need to implement in the days to come, such that we can rescue Ghana's economy. You don't think he needs time for that to happen?
No. He has overstayed his welcome. So, MFA, we are begging Mr. President, he should just resign. There's a place for resignation. The Constitution itself says so, right? That he can resign. Maybe.
But do you see that happening?
It says he can
do
resign.
You see that happening, Mr.
Yes,
President?
he can. Once, as people, we tell him that respectfully, we think that.
Are these realistic demands that you are
resign.
making?
66.
Are these realistic demands that you are making,
yes,
Mr.
that
President? Because
is
you've
it.
asked for a reduction in size of government. That is not happening. And you're
Excellent.
hopeful that the president will resign.
So that tells you that then the best is that just that he goes. Article 66 makes provision for his resignation. So he resigns. Look, and let's not forget, Lieutenant General Joseph Ankra, he resigned over allegations of, concerning about 6,000 cedis at the time. If you convert from the calculations, it's not more than $20,000. Allegations of over about 6,000, a bribe that he's alleged to have paid to somebody to influence a poll. Ankra resigned as a president. So, Mr. President, he should call his historians together. They should look in the history books and tell him that Ankra resigned in a matter concerning 6,000. So, Mr. President should resign. And it's here in the Constitution. And the Constitution makes it clear. So, it's not as if by all means we should run the course of 4 years. No. Once you've seen that this problem is beyond you, you are not able to get your head around it, you just resign. Because it's the same thing. The same story for 6 years. You see the exemptions he mentioned, was it in 2018 or so, 2019? In his State of the Nation address, he mentioned that the exemption that they had been given was the biggest problem. He's giving his own family and friends exemptions. So it's the chickens that have come to what? Roost. So the big government, the 150, 116 ministers he had in the first term, right? Increasing presidential staffers, increasing all the borrowing and bridal borrowing. Those are the chickens that have come home to roost. So we are now paying for it. And you see how we've paid with our savings. So Emefa, at the beginning of this year, if you have $6,400 in your account, you could get $1,000. Today, with $6,400, you can't even get $400. So over 60% of your savings have been whittled away. So the president has to realize that something has to give. So Emefa, let's ask Mr. President, what is giving? So he doesn't accept responsibility for it. And please, when we say accept responsibility, it's not just the slogans. I know you are going through hard times. That's not sufficient. He has to say that, please, I'm extremely sorry I've brought this upon you. So please, I want to resign. And then he does so. That is the responsibility. Anything short of his responsibility will not help. Look, I've seen comments from Jacob Osei Yebu. I see the independent candidate. He asks a question. He says that out of the whole speech, so what is to happen by 2024? Why is that His Excellency's comment is about the projection is on to 2028. Yeah. But there's nothing about 2024. So by the time he's leaving in 2 years, what would it be? So listen to Jacob Osei Yebu. He says the president's address on 30th October 2022 is only affirming breaking the eight mentality. The president failed to state how the economy will be by the end of 2024. Projections into 2028 is depressing without hope. There's no clear solution to the economic challenges, and I wonder how closure of Forex Bureau can resolve the cedi depreciation. There are other people. So please, the problem is that, let's ask His Excellency, so in all of this, where is owning the problem? When we say own the problem, take the bull by the horns, where is that in? To say, I feel what you feel, it's not sufficient. Okay. In the meantime, you see when he was going around his the current tour, 40 V8s. When he came, within the first 3 months, there is a moratorium on V8s. Then in no time, they started buying V8s. They continued buying and buying and buying, unbridled spending. And it's come home to roost. So you say, oh, I'm sorry. Please, I want to resign. Then you go. Okay. The Constitution provides for it. Article 66, that he can resign. It's not by force to stay in office for 4 years. Okay. Well, I'll take social media comments shortly, but let me wrap up with Dr. Priscilla Chumesi Bafo also on Zoom with us. But because we had heard economists talk about the fact that there will be haircuts as part of the debt sustainability analysis, debt restructuring, amongst others. But this evening, we're hearing some different assurance from the president on this.
How feasible really is this, Dr. Chimisi? Because the issues about debt sustainability, we had heard almost all economists tell us that we should expect it, that it may happen some way, somehow, as part of debt restructuring, both foreign and local, domestic, debt. How come we are now hearing this evening that there will be no haircut? In fact, that's what the president says, emphatic. There will be no haircut. So I urge all of you to ignore the false rumors. Just as in the banking sector cleanup, government ensured that the 4.6 million depositors affected by the exercise did not lose their deposits. I'm quoting the president in that speech. How feasible is this, Dr. President Chimisi?
Thank you, Emefa. I believe that in debt restructuring, a number of things can be done. And so, for example, there could be negotiation for postponement of the servicing of the debt, for example. There could be negotiation on interests that have been agreed. And simply, when we talk about haircuts, it's basically getting value that is less than what one anticipated when going in for the investment. So in debt restructuring, I believe that if the president says there will be no haircut, it means that they are negotiating for extended period for the payment of the debt. So for example, if your bonds mature in 6 months, there could be an agreement that government will pay you in 7-8 months time, so that we postpone the payment and spread the debt burden. And indeed, I mean, this is a welcoming news in the sense that a lot of people were on edge, people were discounting their bonds at a very high rate because they were scared they were going to lose the value of their investment. So I believe that is a welcoming news, and it will be good for financial stability and the stability of the financial system as well. Because when people lose credibility in the financial sector, they end up withdrawing their monies and keeping them out of the banking sector. And we know that the financial system needs the resources to be able to parcel it and move it around for deficit spending units to be able to invest the monies in productive activities. So this is a welcoming news. We are yet to see how feasible that will be. In the short term, the president wants to assuage our fears and sort of calm the environment so that people that are panicking would see that there's no point in that. But I mean, the truth of the pudding is in the eating. So as the days go by, we want to see how this debt restructuring will be done, basically.
But by no haircut, really, I'm seeing a lot of questions on this. By no haircut, what then does it really mean? It means that all three things, the principal, interest, and tenor, all that will not be affected, all will be protected? Is that what that means?
Evidently, I mean, if you invest and then based on the interest rates, you expect a certain amount, let's say 10,000 Ghana cedis, and there is no haircut, then it means that you should get your 10,000 Ghana cedis back. But the reality is that if the repayment is extended, then in principle, getting a 10,000 Ghana cedi today is worth more than getting a 10,000 Ghana cedi in a month's time. You see, so in that sense, if it leads to postponement and undue delay in government paying back its commitment in terms of borrowed funds, then people are not taking haircuts, but they are taking delay in the settlement of the debt. And that, in principle, I mean, people can explain that, yes, so long as you are extending it and halting the repayment period, in principle, people are losing value, because if they had taken the money and invested it, they could have earned something on it. But the reality is that it is a risk that comes. We say that government is a risk-free asset, but investment. But the reality is that this is telling us that no investment is risk-free, and for that matter, whatever it is, that is why government is trying hard so that it builds confidence to say that, yes, indeed, when you lend your money to the government, you can sleep and know that you get your money back. But these are turbulent times, and they should do it innovatively so that people do not lose hope in the financial sector.
Okay, well, that's the assurance that we are getting from the president. But just before I let you off, though, we're hearing about the 30% cut, at least that's not new, in salary of government appointees. And he says it remains, including that of the president, and then also the vice president and other appointees. But really, there were calls also for a reduction in size of the government, for instance. In terms of leadership, at least the president has admitted that the economy is in great difficulty. We are in a crisis, and he mentions that he's not even exaggerating. Are you satisfied with this particular intervention? Because this is not new. Were you hopeful that we'll see more in terms of leading by example from the top in terms of what they're doing, since we are all in a crisis situation?
Indeed, when a crisis of this nature emerges, you would want leadership to set the tone, and for that matter, cutting down on expenditure, cutting down on the salaries of government appointees. All these are indicators. The reality is that these would not mean much in terms of the effect it has on the consolidated fund. But it's an indication that really you appreciate the issues and you are taking steps to sort of reduce the extent of hardship that is on the general public. In terms of cutting back on the size of government, I believe that some of us were expecting that we'll see something like that, but it's unfortunate we have not seen anything that in that regard. Because in terms of the size of government, it is still quite large, and it comes with a lot of budgetary implications. But the reality is that it's just a signaling issue, really. The savings that are made there are not that much. But if we are in crisis and we need to put all hands must come on deck and make savings here and there, GRA would be going out to be bringing all the people that are out of the tax net in there, tightening it here and there, then it's only right that leadership sets the tone, really. But I think that in the wisdom of the president, they believe that 30% cut in salaries is good enough.
Okay. We are grateful. That's Dr. Priscilla Chumisi-Bafo, economist there, joining us via Zoom. Indeed, grateful for your time. Let me take a few of your comments on social media, then we can wrap up the extended version of the probe this evening. This one from Thinker Yuno says, the real meaning of things fall apart. For this, we are in it together, right? The private jet on my mind, he says. More of the messages, let's go through them. Let's go through some of the messages. I see one from Manasseh on Twitter also saying, conclusion, the value of the cedi is far higher than the value of the president's address. And I saw one, your Kwame Senior says, your government told us that things will be back on track if we pay e-levy. So e-levy wasn't able to save us, breaking the 8 indeed. That's Kwame Senior's message. Matan, Mr. Sadiq, Minister, says Ghanaians have lost trust in him. We no longer trust him. All the speech someone wrote it, okay. Well, and the nation was not living it, it was editing, okay. And that's a message. And this one says he owns a law firm. He also was the one who won the Supreme Court case. The court should be on during holidays too, okay. And Peter Kaba says, we keep dashing money. Where's the COVID testing money? Government should slow down on taxing its citizens. Some more. Tolerance, you need it, pass him. And then Osajefo Berima says, now all the intention is on IMF, which is short-term measures. It's time we should plan for long-term and put some measures and start some process for sustainability. Dan Emba, Martin Atia, you also have something against Martin Kwiboki, so I'm sure he's reacting to someone else. Is it because they give you, okay, all right. See some of the messages on our live feed then. That'll be all for your messages. But in wrapping up, Mr. Kwibo, so it means that Komipreku Reloaded is still happening?
Yes, it's very
do you have, I'm sure you've notified the police, amongst others, you've satisfied everything?
Yes, yes. So
even in spite of the speech this evening, we are still going
on. Yeah, it still has to come on. And before I go back to Komipreku, look at a nice one that people have brought from the archives. Dr. Mahmoud Baumia in 2012. The government is blaming speculators for the fall in the cedi instead of tackling its depreciation. You see, poetic justice.
Nothing new.
The government is blaming speculators for the fall in the cedi instead of tackling his depreciation. Maybe the president's speech should have been shown to him. He would have edited out this so that, because it's all over social media. Yeah, so Emefa, back to Kumi Preko. That's the right thing to do. Please, fellow Ghanaians, Saturday, 7 a.m., 5th November, please come join us. Let's do Kumi Preko. We'll call on His Excellency to resign so that we can have fresh blood, fresh ideas. His Excellency goes with his whiz-kid, Dr. Mahmoud Baumia, so that we can have fresh blood, fresh ideas. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's how we wrap up this evening's edition of The Probe. Mr. Kwebu, we are grateful for your time. We also heard Dr. Priscilla Chumisi. We also heard from the GPRTU, Samuel Lamoa, and then also from Guta, Mr. Paddy, on this. Reactions to the President's address continues right here on all our channels. You want to stay with us, myjoyonline.com, social media platforms. Keep them coming. I am Emefa Apawu. We have the entire team. We are grateful for your time this evening.